1967, I graduated from high school from Alameda High School. My plan at the time, I wasn't worried about the war. I was going to CSU to be a mechanical engineer. So I went to CSU, I had a student deferment. Got up there, and after 2 years of going to school, I discovered that there's absolutely no way in hell I'm going to get the job that I'm really looking for. It's probably going to be something like designing heating and air conditioning systems for some contractor or structural engineer or something like that. I wanted to design engines for General Motors. So I quit college. A month later, I get a letter from the draft board that says your student deferment has been canceled since we have been notified that you are no longer a student. Another month went by. I got my first draft notice from Mr. Nixon. So I went down to the new customs house to take the physical. Didn't pass it, so they sent me home. In December of 1969, the Selective Service System decided to change their entire way of doing business. They changed it to a lottery system. So they drew two sets of numbers. One was the month and the other was the date of the month. Those two numbers coincided to your birth date. My birthday was October 2nd, so my number was 125. I don't know how they arrived at that, but that's what it happened. So May 1st, 1970, I'm down at the new customs house again because I just got another letter from Mr. Nixon. Figured no big deal. I didn't pass the physical last time. I still have the same heart problem that I had last year. They're just going to send me home. Lottery system didn't work that way. If you were healthy enough to walk through the front door that morning, you were healthy enough to board the plane, go to basic training that afternoon. So they sent me to Fort Lewis, Washington for basic training. First thing you do is take a battery of tests. They want to know if there's any career in the military that you might be suited for, and they also want to know how smart you are. So the results of the test came back. They put me on the waiting list for West Point. As a draftee, like Dave says, you can take an extra year and hopefully be guaranteed some sort of a school. With that letter in my file, it allowed me to get a bunch of good things going for me because the draftees weren't allowed to work on these. The training was too long. They wanted you in Vietnam just as soon as they could get you there. The AIT for this was 4 months long, not eligible for draftees. With that letter being on the waiting list for West Point in my file, that's what I got, was these. Now, these are the delivery truck of the U.S. Army in Vietnam. There's a hook right up underneath here. You'd load a load underneath there attached with straps or with nets or with chains or whatever. Pick it up, haul it to where it needed to be, hover down till the load hit the ground, press a button inside the ship, the hook would open, the straps would drop, and then you fly away. You can haul stuff inside of them. You can haul 33 troops inside of them. But if you do that, you have to land it. And that's going to take you a half hour to 45 minutes sitting on the ground to unload that. That is way too big a target to be sitting on the ground not moving. So the preferred method was the sling load method. These required regular service at every 100 flight hours, and that was my job.
This is a picture. Sorry, I didn't tell you about it.
Yeah, well, you told me you were gonna. This is sling loading. Now you can see here, whoops, there's multiple hooks. This is a D model. The ones I worked on were C models. They only had one hook right here in the middle. So we hauled stuff this way. But you can haul quite a bit of stuff. And we did. Come on. It won't change.
Point it up there. There you go.
There we go. Here's another Chinook on a fire base. Probably looks like he's delivered troops. Again, fire base not too bad because you do have some help there, but not the preferred method. And as big as they are, they really didn't like to do that. If the battle was over with, they'd run one of these in and pick up the casualties with, but they didn't like using them with the newer troops. When I got to Vietnam, I lived right behind this door here. That was a 12-foot by 16-foot empty room. The only thing that was in there was 4 cots and 4 men. After a couple of months, I moved next door to this room. That room was all subdivided, walled in, ceilings, painted, drapes, the whole ball of wax. You can see it's raining. It'd rain like that for 24 hours a day for at least 30 days. Depending on where you were at in Vietnam, I was up north, it could be longer. Then we'd usually get a break for maybe a month or 2 months. Then we'd have another 2 weeks of like torrential rains again wasn't the monsoons, it was just another rainstorm. Best place to take a shower during the monsoons, right there on that sidewalk. We had a tank that was nothing but a rubber bladder on top of a tower, and that was the water for our showers. They'd fill that thing every morning with a water truck. That water lasted about 6 hours, and that thing was dry. So if you didn't get your shower in early in the morning, you didn't get it. During the monsoons, you could get it any time of the day or night you wanted, and a lot of people did. This was the last room I lived in. After a while, the guy that I worked for that was in charge of my maintenance team came home. His year in Vietnam was up. Since I was the honor graduate of my AIT class and still had that West Point letter in my file, and I was a little bit older than the rest of the guys on the team, they decided, you're the new head guy. So they put sergeant stripes on me, made me the new head guy. I was still living in the enlisted man's area. We had a lot of enlisted men coming in. They decided, you NCOs, non-commissioned officers, that are living in the enlisted man's area need to move to the NCO area. I knew this was coming. So I scrounged all this nice new lumber, nice brand new plywood, 2x4s, some trim pieces. And when we got ready to move up there, I wasn't working that week. So they said, you build the building. There's going to be 8 of you guys moving up there. We want 4 2-man rooms. 4 of the guys decided they just wanted 1 big room. The rest of us wanted the 2 small rooms. So since I scrounged all this material and I was building it, all that material wound up in my room. The other sides of those walls are just bare 2x4s and the back side of the plywood. All this good stuff was in my room. So that was my bunk, my refrigerator, my fan. Right here is a cabinet that I built. Underneath it is a closet. On top were 2 reel-to-reel tape recorders.
Creature comforts. When you're in Vietnam, you're there for 365 days. He's going to make himself as comfortable as can, better than living in a tent. So these are the kinds of things that were important to the young guy that's in Vietnam.
Yeah, these guys sitting here are mechanics from the 4th maintenance team. I ran the 1st maintenance team. This guy on the end and I went through AIT together. And we went to Vietnam together. We were supposed to come back from Vietnam together, but him and the other guy that I went over there with, they decided to be smart. They changed the dates on their paperwork, so they both came back a month early. This box they're sitting on is the way our parts used to show up. Every part on that Chinook that has moving parts inside of it or is a moving part itself is limited on the number of hours it can remain on that aircraft before it has to be taken off, sent back for rebuild. So that's a blade box. Those are the blades. When you take a blade off, you unbolt a ring of bolts are on the top of that box, take the top off, pull that new blade out, put it on the helicopter, put the old blade back in that box with the appropriate paperwork and send it back to be rebuilt. This is the areas where we worked back here. It was nice and wide because we had to have a wrecker with a 22-foot boom on it and be able to drive it around that helicopter so you could remove parts in different locations. Out here in front, these are all ships that are online. They're parked between 2 revetments like this. The purpose of those revetments is if somebody does something stupid and starts a fire out there, or you get an incoming rocket or a mortar and sets one of those helicopters on fire, it'll only burn 1 of them, not all 16 of them. Whoops. This was a sky crane. At the time, that was the only helicopter in the military inventory that was big enough to pick up a Chinook. Nowadays, the D model Chinooks have so much more power and more lifting capability that a Chinook will pick up a Chinook. So if you're sending a Chinook back for a rebuild or has been wrecked or something, you take the blades off of it, put it inside the Chinook, pick it up with another Chinook, and haul it away. That's why the windows are all covered with sheet metal on this thing. This is a museum piece now, no longer used by the military. This is a Chinook that had just came out of maintenance at the Reno National Guard base when I was there for a reunion. After they come out of maintenance, they set them on their parking spot like that, fire them up, and run the engines for 15 to 20 minutes. They want to make sure that the oil pressure comes up to spec, the oil temperature comes up to spec, no warning lights come on, nothing's leaking, and there ain't no banging and rattling. After it's run up for a while, then they take it up and test flight. It has to go through a certain amount of maneuvers to make sure that it's safe to fly. When it comes back from the test flight, then it goes back out online for missions. While I was there, I got to be known as the guy that could fix anything. I used to take shortcuts on a lot of stuff. We used to have whiteboards about the size of these, all 4 teams. The ship number, the hours that was coming in for service for, and what the major things you were working on were all listed in there. My board got completely full, completely erased, and by the time I left, it was almost full again. The other 3 boards weren't even half full yet from the first time. Anytime they come up with something nobody could figure out, they got me. Because I used to do my troubleshooting a little different than the military way. The military way, you come up here. This is the most expensive part on that helicopter that might cause that problem. Change that. That didn't fix it. Next most expensive part. Next most expensive part. If you're a mechanic, the real way to do this is you start down here at the bottom with the cheapest part. Because usually it's something cheap or something stupid that's wrong. So if you start at the bottom and work your way up, you're going to find the problem. If you start at the top and work your way down, you're never going to find the problem because they don't want it in maintenance that long. Thank you very much.